There are nights when the silence is so heavy it hurts to breathe. Emily knew those nights. She had lived them holding her mother's cold hand, counting coins that were never enough, dreaming of a future that seemed as distant as the stars. That summer rain hit her window like tears from the sky, and she thought that maybe the world was crying for all the women like her, invisible, tired, forgotten. But there are moments in life where everything changes with a single look, a single encounter, a single opportunity that arrives disguised as a job in a mansion that smells of secrets and broken hearts. Emily didn't know that when she rang the doorbell, she was also knocking on the heart of a man who had forgotten how to beat for love. Some stories begin with promised happy endings. This one began with two broken souls who found each other in the darkness and decided to be the light for one another. The rain hammered against the windows of the small apartment like desperate fists. Emily Johnson, 20 years old, held the letter that had just changed her life forever in her trembling hands. The words blurred between the tears that fell uncontrollably onto the official paper. Immediate eviction for non-payment. "This can't be happening," she murmured in a broken voice as her green eyes filled with a desperation she had never known. Her fair skin, usually rosy, now looked as pale as broken porcelain. "Mom, what are we going to do?" From the next room came a dry, persistent cough. Sarah Johnson, her 45-year-old mother, was fighting an illness that doctors could no longer control without expensive treatments. The money from selling the few family heirlooms had run out, and Emily's part-time job at a downtown Miami diner barely covered the most basic medicines. "Honey," her mother's weak voice called her. Emily quickly wiped her tears and walked to the bed where the woman who had been her only support in life lay. Sarah had raised her daughter alone after her. Father abandoned them when Emily was just 5. "What does the letter say, sweetie?" Sarah asked, although she could already guess the answer from Emily's devastated expression. "We have 3 days, Mom. Just 3 days to get $3,000, or they'll kick us out onto the street." The words came out like knives from her throat. Sarah closed her eyes, feeling the weight of her failure as a mother. She had worked her whole life as a housekeeper in wealthy homes, but her illness had forced her to quit. Her daughter, who should be studying at university, had to abandon her dreams to care for her. "I'm so sorry, Emily," Sarah whispered. "I've ruined your future." "Don't say that, Mom. You never ruined anything. The world is what's broken, not us." Emily took her mother's cold hand and squeezed it tenderly. "I'm going to get the money. I don't know how, but I will." That night, while her mother slept fitfully, Emily went out onto the small balcony and watched the city lights stretch out before her. Miami shimmered with promises that were never kept for people like her. She had dreamed of being a teacher, of having a family of her own, of giving her mother a dignified old age. Now, all of that seemed as distant as the stars barely visible through the clouds. The phone rang, interrupting her bitter thoughts. It was Jessica, her best friend since childhood. "Emily, did you see the news? They're looking for housekeepers for a very rich family. They pay really well, but it's a full-time live-in job. They live on Star Island." Star Island was the most exclusive neighborhood in the city, home to CEOs, politicians, and heirs to ancestral fortunes. Emily had never set foot in that area. "How much do they pay?" she asked, a thread of hope in her voice. $4,000 a month plus room and board. "Emily, this is your chance." $4,000. It was more money than she had ever seen at once in her entire life. But it meant leaving her mother alone for days, working for people who would probably see her as just another piece of furniture. "Do you know which family it is?" "The Williams family. Michael Williams owns half of Miami. They say his son is the richest and most mysterious man in the city. He's never in magazines, never gives interviews. All anyone knows is that he runs all the family businesses." Emily felt a shiver. She knew that last name from the newspapers. The Williams family was practically a dynasty in Florida. Owners of hotels, construction companies, shipping lines. Old money, real power. "Do you think I have a chance? I'm young, I don't have experience in large houses." You have something better than experience, Emily. You have need, and that's the most powerful force in the world. The next day, Emily got up before dawn. She put on her only decent dress, a navy blue one her mother had given her for her high school graduation. She pulled her brown hair back into a simple ponytail and looked at herself in the mirror. Her green eyes reflected determination mixed with terror. "I'll be back with good news, Mom," she whispered, before kissing Sarah's forehead, who was still asleep. The bus took her to the causeway entrance to Star Island, where she had to walk for what felt like miles to reach the address. The Williams mansion was more impressive than she had imagined. Wrought iron gates, gardens that looked like they were from a magazine, a fountain in the center of the front courtyard. Everything screamed money and power. She rang the bell with trembling hands. An older, elegantly dressed woman opened the door. It was Helen, the head housekeeper. "Are you here for the job?" Helen asked, looking her up and down. "Yes, ma'am, I'm Emily Johnson." Helen led her into a foyer that was larger than her entire apartment. The walls were covered with art Emily had only seen in books, and the marble floor shone so brightly she could see her reflection. "Follow me. Mrs. Elizabeth will interview you." Elizabeth Williams was a woman in her 50s, impeccably dressed, with an elegance that commanded immediate respect. Her grey eyes assessed Emily with the precision of a specialist. "Tell me, Emily, why do you want to work here?" The question was simple, but Emily felt her future depended on the answer. She could lie, make up a story about professional dreams, but something in Elizabeth Williams's eyes told her that this woman would spot a lie instantly. "Because my mother is dying, and I need money for her medicine, because we're about to be homeless, because I have no other options, Mrs. Williams." Elizabeth blinked, clearly not expecting such brutal honesty. "How old are you?" 20. "Education?" "High school graduate. I was going to study to be a teacher, but—" Emily didn't finish the sentence. Elizabeth walked to the window overlooking the backyard. From there you could see a part of the pool, and beyond it, what looked like a smaller house on the property. "Would you be willing to live here?" "My son, let's just say he's very particular about his privacy. He needs someone who is completely discreet, who doesn't ask questions, who doesn't talk to reporters or gossips about what they see in this house." "Of course, Ma'am. The job is from Monday to Friday. You can go to your mother on weekends. $4,000 a month, food included, your own room. But if you break our trust, if you talk too much, you'll not only be out of a job, but I'll make sure you never find work anywhere in this city." Elizabeth's tone wasn't threatening. It was a simple statement of fact. Emily understood she was facing a woman accustomed to her words being law. "I understand perfectly, Mrs. Williams. You can start tomorrow. Helen will show you your responsibilities." When Emily left the mansion, she felt like she could fly. She had gotten the job. Her mother would have the medicine she needed. They would have a roof over their heads. But as she walked back to the bus, "Stop." She couldn't get Elizabeth Williams's words about her son out of her mind. Very particular about his privacy. What kind of man needed so much secrecy? She didn't know it then, but that question would change her life in ways she could never imagine. She thought this was the worst night of her life, but she can't imagine what's coming next. Have you ever felt that just when all seems lost, an opportunity appears that changes everything? Comment what city you're watching from and hit like if you want to know what secrets the Williams family is hiding. Subscribe so you don't miss the continuation. Emily's first day at the Williams mansion began at 6 in the morning. Helen woke her gently but firmly, showing her every corner of the house that would be her responsibility. "This is the main wing," Helen explained, as they walked through hallways adorned with paintings that cost more than 10 years of Emily's salary. "Mr. Michael and Mrs. Elizabeth live here. Never enter without permission." Then they reached the East Wing, and Helen lowered her voice conspiratorially. "This part belongs to Mr. Richard, the eldest son. He's married, lives with his wife in New York. He only comes on weekends, and when he does, he needs everything to be perfect." Emily nodded, making mental notes of every detail. "And the other son?" she asked, remembering Elizabeth had mentioned someone very private. Helen stopped in front of a dark wooden door, different from the others. This one seemed more solid, more protective. "Ethan," Helen said in a very low voice. "Ethan Williams, 30 years old, never married. He handles all the family's international business. He is—" Helen searched for the right words. "He's a very intelligent but very wounded man." Wounded? 5 years ago he lost his fiancée in an accident. Since then he barely leaves his wing of the house. He works day and night, travels constantly for business, but when he's here, he prefers to be alone. Emily felt a pang of compassion. She knew the pain of loss, though she had never lost a romantic love. "His wing has a separate entrance," Helen continued. "His own kitchen, living room, office. He practically lives apart from the rest of the family. Your job will be to keep those spaces immaculate, but you'll probably never see him. He leaves very early and comes back very late." What exactly happened to his fiancée? Helen looked around, making sure they were completely alone. Her name was Olivia. She was from an equally wealthy family. They knew each other since childhood. They were going to get married that year. One night, after a big argument with Ethan, she drove off in the rain. Her car went off the road on the Rickenbacker Causeway. Oh my God. Ethan never forgave himself. He says if they hadn't fought, she never would have gone out that night. Since then, it's like he's built a wall around his heart. Emily spent the first week without even seeing a shadow of Ethan Williams. She cleaned his wing when he wasn't there, always following Helen's precise instructions. The office was impressive. Huge windows overlooking the city, a mahogany desk, computer screens showing numbers and graphs she didn't understand. But what caught her attention the most were the small personal details. A photo on the corner of the desk, a man with intense blue eyes, black hair, and a sad smile, hugging a very beautiful blonde woman. They had to be Ethan and Olivia. There were also books, lots of books, not just about business, but philosophy, psychology, novels. In the margins, Emily could see an elegant but rushed handwriting, as if his thoughts flowed faster than his hands could write. On Friday of her first week, while cleaning Ethan's living room, she heard the main door open. She froze, cloth in hand, listening to approaching footsteps. "Helen, is there someone new in the house?" It was a deep, masculine voice, with a hint of weariness that touched something inside Emily's chest. "Yes, Ethan. I told you about Emily, the new maid." "Ah, yes, just make sure she understands I prefer not to be disturbed." Emily felt a mix of curiosity and pain. That man sounded like someone who had given up on hope. That night, returning to her small room in the service quarters, Emily called her mother. "How are you feeling, Mum?" "Better, sweetie. The medicines are working. The doctor says if I keep this up, I might be able to walk a little next week." For the first time in months, Emily smiled with genuine joy. "And your job? Are they treating you well?" "Yes, Mom. It's different. The people here have a lot of secrets." On Saturday, Emily returned to her apartment to spend the weekend with Sarah. Her mother greeted her with a wider smile than she had seen in months. "You look different, honey. More hopeful." "It's because I don't have to worry about money all the time. I can think about other things." "Like what?" Emily caught herself thinking of blue eyes and sad smiles. "I don't know yet, Mom." On Monday, when she returned to the mansion, something had changed. Helen was waiting for her with a worried expression. "Emily, Ethan specifically asked for you." "What?" Emily's heart raced. "Did I do something wrong?" "I don't think so. He just said he wanted to meet the person who was cleaning his space. He's in his office now." With trembling legs, Emily walked to Ethan's wing. She knocked softly on the office door. "Come in." When she opened the door, she saw him for the first time. Ethan Williams was more imposing than she had imagined, tall, with broad shoulders that perfectly filled out a grey sweater. His black hair was slightly disheveled, as if he had been running his hands through it. But it was his eyes that paralyzed her, blue as the Miami sky in December, but with a depth that spoke of sleepless nights and unanswered questions. "You must be Emily." Yes, Mr. Williams. Ethan studied her for a moment that felt eternal. Emily realized she was holding her breath. How old are you? 20, sir. Very young. There was something in his voice, not condescension, but a kind of melancholy. Helen says you have a sick mother. Emily nodded, not sure if she should elaborate or stay silent. What's her illness? Lung cancer, sir, but she's responding well to the treatment now that we can afford the medicine. Ethan nodded slowly, and for a moment Emily saw something that looked like genuine understanding in his eyes. I've noticed. You're very careful with my books. Pardon? The books in my office. You always leave them exactly where they were, but clean. Some of the other maids moved them. Emily blushed. It's just, I noticed they had notes in the margins. I thought they must be important to you. For the first time, Ethan's lips curved into something that could almost be called a smile. Do you read much, Emily? When I can, sir. Before, at the public library. What kind of books? Everything, but I like stories about people who find their way after being lost. Ethan stared at her for a moment so long that Emily wondered if she had said something wrong. Interesting, he finally murmured. You may go. I just wanted to meet you. Emily gave a small nod and headed for the door, but Ethan's voice stopped her. Emily. Yes, sir. If you ever want to borrow a book, you can. Just let me know which one. When Emily left the office, her heart was beating so hard she was sure Helen could hear it. From the other side of the house. That night, while organizing Ethan's clothes in his closet, she found something that made her freeze. Among the formal shirts, there was a small black velvet box. Inside, an engagement ring with a diamond so large and brilliant, it seemed to capture all the light in the room, the ring he never got to give Olivia. With trembling hands, she closed the box and put it exactly where she had found it. But that image haunted her all night. The next day, Ethan approached her as she cleaned the living room. Did you find anything interesting yesterday? His voice was calm, but there was a tension in his eyes. Emily looked up, and for a moment that lasted an eternity. They looked at each other in silence. Just clothes that needed to be organized, sir. Ethan nodded slowly, and in his gaze there was something that looked like gratitude. Thank you, Emily. It wasn't until later that she realized he hadn't thanked her for cleaning. And just when she started to trust, the past returned without warning. Have you ever felt like you know someone without really knowing them? Comment what you think will happen between Emily and Ethan, and don't forget to hit like if you want to know what other secrets this family hides. The story is just beginning. The following weeks brought a strange but comfortable routine. Ethan started leaving books on his desk with small sticky notes. For Emily, I think you'll like this one. They were novels about strong women overcoming adversity, biographies of people who had changed the world from humble beginnings. Emily read them during her breaks and always left a small thank you note. They never spoke directly about the books, but she knew he read her notes because sometimes he would find books related to comments she had made. One March afternoon, while Emily was cleaning the office, Ethan arrived early from a meeting. She was startled to see him, nearly dropping a glass vase. I'm sorry, Mr. Williams. I didn't know you. It's fine. Ethan loosened his tie with a tired gesture. How is your mother? It was the first time he had asked about Sarah directly in weeks. Much better. In fact, the doctor says she can start walking short distances again. I'm glad to hear that. Ethan sat in his chair, but instead of opening his laptop as usual, he looked at her. Emily, can I ask you something personal? Her heart raced. Of course. Have you ever been in love? The question caught her completely. Off guard, Emily felt her cheeks flush. No, sir, I've never had time for those things. Ethan nodded slowly. And do you feel like you've missed out on something? Emily considered the question carefully. It was strange to be having this conversation with her boss, but there was something in Ethan's eyes that told her he needed an honest answer. Sometimes, I wonder what it would be like to love someone so much you'd be willing to change your life for them. But I also think, what if that person leaves? How do you go on living after that? Ethan looked at her with an intensity that made her feel as if he could see right into her soul. That's a very wise question for someone your age. Can I ask you something too, sir? Ethan hesitated, but nodded. Was it worth it? Loving so much, even if it hurt in the end? Ethan's eyes darkened, and for a moment, Emily thought she had crossed an invisible line. But then he spoke, so quietly she had to lean in to hear him. Every moment was worth it, but the pain changes you in ways you never imagined. That night, Emily couldn't sleep. She kept thinking about the conversation, about the way Ethan had said those words, as if confessing a secret he had guarded for years. On Thursday of that week, everything changed. Emily was organizing books in the office when she heard raised voices coming from the main living room. Helen appeared at the door, her face pale. "Emily, you need to go to your room right now." "What's wrong?" "Unexpected visitors have arrived. People Ethan doesn't want to see." But before she could move, a woman strode into the office uninvited. She was blonde, elegantly dressed, with green eyes that were beautiful but cold as ice. "Where is Ethan?" she demanded, completely ignoring Emily and Helen. "Miss Victoria, Mr. Ethan is not—" Helen began. "Don't lie to me. His car is outside." At that moment, Ethan appeared at the door. His face was paler than Emily had ever seen it. "Victoria, what are you doing here?" "I came to talk to you. Alone." Her eyes landed on Emily with obvious contempt. "Who is this?" "She's the housekeeper. It's none of your business." Victoria let out a laugh that sounded like breaking glass. "My God, Ethan, seriously? A maid?" Emily felt as if she had been slapped. The scorn in the woman's voice was so palpable it hurt to breathe. "Helen, take Emily to the kitchen," Ethan said in a tense voice. But Emily was already moving toward the door. She didn't want to hear any more. From the kitchen, however, it was impossible not to hear the shouting. "5 years, Ethan. 5 years I've waited for you. I never asked you to wait. I was Olivia's best friend. She would have wanted us to be happy together. Don't you mention her name. Do you prefer to live like a hermit for the rest of your life? Or maybe you'd rather entertain yourself with the domestic staff?" There was a silence so heavy that Emily could feel it from where she stood. "Get out of my house, Victoria, now! This isn't over, Ethan. Your family also thinks it's time you settled down." After Victoria left, a sepulchral silence fell over the house. Helen motioned for Emily to go back to her work, but when she got to the office, Ethan was standing by the window, his shoulders tense. "Mr. Williams, are you okay?" Ethan didn't turn around. "Emily, have you ever felt that no matter what you do, there are always people trying to control you?" "All the time, sir." This time he did turn. His blue eyes were filled with a frustration she recognized immediately. "Victoria was Olivia's best friend. Ever since the accident, she's tried to convince me that we're destined to be together. My family thinks the same. And what do you think?" Ethan came closer to her, so close that Emily could smell his cologne, a mix of cedar and something deeper. "I think that people like Victoria never understand that you can't force love, that you can't replace one person with another, as if they were interchangeable objects." "You're right." "Do you really think so?" "Yes. True love isn't something you can plan or control. It just happens." Ethan looked at her for a long moment, and Emily felt something shift in the air between them. It was like an invisible electric current. "Emily," he said her name so softly, it sounded like a caress. "Yes? Thank you for understanding." On Friday, as Emily was getting ready to go see her mother, Ethan stopped her in the, "Emily, would you mind if we had dinner together sometime, just to talk? I've been feeling very lonely lately." Emily's heart stopped completely. "Mr. Williams, I don't know if that would be appropriate." "You're right. It was a stupid idea." Ethan started to walk away, but Emily called out to him, "Wait!" Their eyes met. "I didn't say I didn't want to, just that it's complicated." Ethan smiled, and this time it was a real smile, the first one Emily had seen since she met him. "Everything worthwhile is complicated, don't you think?" That night, as she walked to the bus stop, Emily felt that her world had changed forever. Something was growing between her and Ethan, something that scared and excited her at the same time. But she also knew that the worlds they came from were as different as the earth and the sky. Could anything real grow between them? Or would she just end up hurt, like all people of her class who dared to dream too high? What he said before he left will change the course of the whole story. Do you think Emily should take the risk, or do you think the social differences are too great? Comment what you would do in her place and hit like if you want to know how this impossible story continues. Subscribe so you don't miss a single chapter. The weekend with her mother turned into torture for Emily. Sarah noticed she was distracted from the moment she arrived. "What's wrong, sweetie? You seem different." Emily was making dinner in their small kitchen, trying to keep her hands busy so she wouldn't think about blue eyes and sad smiles. "It's nothing, Mom. Just work." "Emily Johnson, I've known you since you were born. This isn't just work." Her mother was right. For 20 years, Sarah had been her confidant, her only family, her best friend. She couldn't lie to her. "Mom, is it possible to fall in love with someone who lives in a completely different world from yours?" Sarah put down her knitting and looked at her daughter intently. "Are you in love with someone from that house?" Emily blushed so deeply that her mother had the answer without needing words. "Oh, sweetie," Sarah sighed deeply. "Is he the one? Does he treat you well? Does he respect you?" "Yes, Mom. He's different. He's suffering a lot because of something that happened in his past. But with me, he's gentle, interested in what I think. He lends me books, asks about you. And him? Does he feel something for you?" "I don't know. Sometimes I think so, but—" "Mom, he's Ethan Williams. I'm a housekeeper. His family would never accept it." Sarah got up with difficulty and walked to her daughter. She took her face in her rough but loving hands. "Listen to me carefully, Emily. Money doesn't define a person's worth. You have a pure heart, a smart mind, and more dignity than many of those rich women who have never worked a day in their lives. But, Mom, but nothing. If that man is smart enough to see your worth, then maybe he deserves your love. If not, then he wasn't the right man for you." On Monday, Emily returned to the mansion with her heart full of equal parts determination and fear. Ethan was waiting for her in the kitchen, something he had never done before. "Good morning, Emily." "Good morning, Mr. Williams. How was your weekend?" "Good, thank you." "And yours?" Ethan walked over to the coffee maker, but Emily noticed his movements were nervous. "Emily, about what I asked you on Friday." "Dinner." "Yes, I was thinking, and maybe tonight here at the house. Helen can prepare something special and we can have dinner in the garden. Nothing formal, just talk." Emily felt butterflies in her stomach. "Are you sure? What will your parents think?" "My parents are in Europe for 2 weeks. It will just be Helen, you and me in the house." The way he said it, with that slightly husky voice, made Emily feel warm in places she didn't know could feel warm. "Okay." The smile, Ethan, gave her could have lit up all of Miami. That afternoon, Emily got ready with more care than she had ever put into her appearance. She wore her only nice dress, a light green one that matched her eyes, and left her hair down for the first time since she started working there. When she went down to the garden, her breath caught. Ethan had transformed the space. There were fairy lights strung between the trees, candles on a small table, and fresh flowers that filled the air with their perfume. "You look beautiful," Ethan said when he saw her arrive. Emily blushed. "Thank you. This is lovely." During dinner, they talked about everything and nothing. Ethan told her about his business trips, about cities he had visited. Emily told him about her dreams of being a teacher, about the books that had marked her the most. "Do you know what I like most about you, Emily?" Ethan asked as they finished dessert. "What?" "That you're real. In my world, everything is artificial. People say what they think I want to hear, act in a way they think will benefit them. But you're genuine. It's because I have nothing to gain by lying. You have more to gain than you think." There was a moment of silence charged with electricity. Ethan stood up and extended his hand. "Shall we dance, even if there's no music?" Emily took his hand, and when Ethan pulled her close, she felt the world disappear. They danced in silence, moving to the rhythm of their heartbeats. "Emily," Ethan murmured, his face so close to hers she could feel his breath. "Yes, I'm falling in love with you." The words hit Emily like a wave. She looked up and got lost in those blue eyes that had obsessed her for weeks. "Ethan, I know it's complicated. I know we come from different worlds, but I can't keep pretending I don't feel this." Before Emily could answer, Ethan tilted his head and kissed her. It was a soft, tentative kiss at first, but when she responded it became deeper, more desperate. When they broke apart, they were both breathing heavily. "I'm falling in love with you too," Emily confessed in a whisper. Ethan hugged her so tightly that for a moment she thought he would never let her go. But the magic of the moment was shattered by the sound of a car arriving at the main entrance. "What?" Ethan frowned. "My parents shouldn't be back until—" Helen appeared, running into the garden, her face filled with panic. "Ethan, your parents just arrived, and they have Victoria with them." The color drained from Ethan's face. "Emily, you have to go. Now." "But now, Emily, if my father sees you here like this with me, he'll fire you immediately, or worse." With a breaking heart, Emily ran to her room as she heard voices approaching the garden. She changed quickly and peeked out the window. Ethan was standing by the still-decorated table, with Victoria clinging to his arm, while his parents observed the scene with satisfied expressions. "How romantic, son," she heard Elizabeth Williams say. "I'm glad to see you're finally coming out of your shell." Emily couldn't hear Ethan's response, but she saw that he didn't pull away from Victoria. That night, Emily cried herself to sleep. Had it all been a lie? A moment of weakness from Ethan that he already regretted? The answer came the next day. Ethan was nowhere to be seen in his wing, and when Helen brought her the day's instructions, her eyes were red. "What happened last night, Helen?" Ethan's parents came back from Europe early because Victoria called them. She told them she was worried about Ethan, that she had heard rumors he was getting inappropriately involved with the staff. Emily felt the world tilt. "And what did Ethan say?" "I don't know, honey, but this morning I saw Victoria leaving his room." Helen's words fell on Emily like molten lead. Ethan had spent the night with Victoria. It had all been a lie. Can you love someone who broke your soul? The answer is one step away. Do you think Ethan really betrayed Emily, or is there something more to it? Comment what you think really happened that night, and hit like if your heart is breaking for Emily too. The truth will be more shocking than you imagine. For 3 days, Emily didn't see Ethan. Helen told her he had traveled for urgent business, but Emily knew the truth. He had fled after that night with Victoria. The days passed like a slow torture. Emily cleaned the mansion with automatic movements, but her mind was constantly on Ethan. Where was he? What was he thinking? Had it all been a cruel illusion? Sarah, during their nightly calls, immediately noticed the change in her daughter's voice. "Honey, you sound like a lost soul. What happened?" "It's complicated, Mom." "Is it that man you told me about?" Emily couldn't hold back the tears any longer. "I thought he loved me, Mom. For a moment I believed we were real. But his family, his ex showed up and he stayed with her." "Oh, honey," Sarah sighed from the other end of the line. "Rich men are complicated. They have a lot of pressures that people like us don't understand. Do you think I should quit, leave this place, and let him believe you're not worth the fight? No, sweetie. If that man truly loves you, he'll find a way to prove it. And if he doesn't, then he wasn't the man for you." On Tuesday night, Emily was organizing clothes in Ethan's closet when she heard voices in the garden. She peeked out the window and saw Elizabeth Williams, walking with Victoria, both sipping tea on the terrace. "She's perfect for Ethan," Victoria was saying. "Olivia would have wanted us to be happy together." "You're right," Elizabeth replied. "That little maid is nothing more than a temporary distraction. Ethan needs a woman of his class, someone who understands the responsibilities that come with our last name." "I've been thinking about a December wedding," Victoria continued. "Something intimate but elegant. I've already spoken with my own parents, and they are thrilled with the idea." Emily felt her stomach churn. She moved away from the window, her heart shattered. Was it that easy for them to decide his future? Had Ethan agreed to all of this? On Wednesday, Helen handed her the keys to Ethan's wing with a strange expression. "You need to clean his office very well today, honey. Mr. Ethan is coming back tonight." "Do you know where he was?" Helen lowered her voice. "In Chicago. They say he was in meetings with foreign investors. But I think he just needed to get away from all this drama." On Thursday morning, as she cleaned Ethan's office with mechanical movements, she found something that paralyzed her. On the desk was a letter with her name written in the elegant handwriting she already knew by heart. With trembling hands, she opened it. "Emily, I know I don't even deserve for you to read this letter after what happened. I know you must think everything I told you was a lie, that I was just playing with you. It wasn't like that. Every word I said to you was true. Every moment we spent together was real. What I feel for you is the most real thing I've experienced in 5 years. But my family has the power to destroy not only your job, but any chance you have of getting another one in this city. My father knows every important employer. One word from him, and you would never be able to work anywhere. I can't let you pay the consequences for my feelings." Victoria stayed that night, but nothing happened between us. I slept on the sofa in my office, but I let my family believe what they wanted to believe because I'm a coward. I was in Chicago these past few days trying to find a solution. I spoke with lawyers, with contacts, with anyone who could help me protect you from my family. But I always come to the same conclusion. There's no way to fight them without you getting hurt. I'm not asking you to forgive me. I'm only asking you to understand that everything I do is to protect you. I'm going to keep my distance. It's for the best. When you receive this letter, I will have already spoken to my parents. I'm going to tell them that I accept their plans for me, that I'm going to marry Victoria, not because I love her, but because it's the only way to keep them away from you. I will miss you every day for the rest of my life. Ethan P.S. I've put extra money in your pay this month. Please don't see it as charity. It's the least I can do after hurting you. Use it, so your mother can have the best possible treatment." Emily read the letter 3 times before tears blinded her. She felt a mix of relief and rage that she didn't know how to process. Relief because Ethan hadn't betrayed her with Victoria. Rage because he had decided for her what was best without even asking her opinion. But there was something else in that letter that filled her with terror. Ethan was going to sacrifice his own happiness to protect her. He was going to marry a woman he didn't love just to keep his family away from her. That afternoon, when Helen handed her her pay envelope, Emily saw that there was indeed extra money, a lot of extra money, enough to pay for her mother's treatment for 6 full months. "I'm not accepting this," she told Helen. "Honey, Mr. Ethan was very specific. I don't care. I'm not a woman who can be paid to keep quiet." Helen looked at her with compassion. "What are you going to do?" "I'm going to wait for him, and we're going to have a very serious conversation. Emily, be careful. Mr. Michael came back this morning in a very bad mood. Something big is happening in this family." That night, Emily barely slept. Every noise woke her, waiting to hear Ethan's car arrive. Finally, around 3 in the morning, she heard the familiar sound of his Toyota's engine. She stayed awake until she heard the lights in the main house go out. Then she got dressed, left her room, and walked to Ethan's wing, as if she were going to face her. Destiny. She knocked softly on his office door. "Ethan, it's Emily. I know you're in there." Silence. "I read your letter. We need to talk." More silence, but she could hear movement inside. "Fine, I'll talk and you listen." Emily sat on the floor, leaning against the door. "First, I don't want your extra money. I'm not a woman you can buy or silence. Second, I don't need you to make decisions for me. I'm perfectly capable of assessing the risks of my own choices. Third," her voice broke slightly. "Third, if what you felt for me was real, then you have no right to unilaterally decide it's over. Love doesn't work like that." She heard movement behind the door, but it didn't open. "Ethan, I'm going to tell you something I've never told anyone. When my father left us, I was 5 years old. My mother cried for weeks. I was too young to understand what was happening, but I remember asking her why Dad had gone. She told me, "Sometimes, honey, people leave because they think it's for the best, but they're wrong. The best thing for us is for them to stay and fight for us." Ethan, you lost Olivia in a terrible accident, but if you lose this, if you lose me, it will be because you chose to, and that's a choice you're going to have to live with for the rest of your life. The door opened so suddenly that Emily almost fell backward. Ethan was standing there, barefoot, with disheveled hair and red eyes. He looked as if he hadn't slept in days. "Do you think this is easy for me? Do you think I'm not dying inside every second I spend away from you?" Emily stood up, facing him. "Then stop doing it." "You don't understand," Ethan shouted, and then realized he had raised his voice. He glanced toward the door, making sure no one had heard, and then pulled her inside the office. "You don't understand the kind of people my family are when someone gets in the way of their plans." "Then explain it to me." Ethan ran his hands through his hair, a gesture Emily had learned he made when he was frustrated. "Do you know how Olivia really died?" The question took Emily completely by surprise. "Helen told me it was an accident, that she drove off after a fight with you." "That's the official version." Ethan walked to the window, turning his back to her. "The truth is more complicated." Emily felt a chill. "What do you mean?" "Olivia had discovered something about my father's business, something dirty, illegal. She was going to go to the authorities." "Oh my God." "The night she died, we had fought because she wanted me to support her, for us to go report my father together. I refused. I was afraid of what he might do to us." Ethan turned to face Emily, and she could see tears in his eyes. She stormed out of the house, saying that if I didn't have the courage to do the right thing, she would do it alone. An hour later, her car went off the causeway. "Do you think your father—" "I have no proof. I never did. But Olivia was an excellent driver. She knew that road like the back of her hand. And right after the accident, my father's legal problems mysteriously disappeared." Emily sat down heavily in the chair opposite the desk. The revelation was too much to process. "That's why you're so scared. My father can't just take away your job. He can make your mother lose her medical treatment. He can make sure you can never rent a decent place in this city. He can—" Ethan stopped, as if the words were too terrible to say. "He can what?" "He can physically harm you, Emily, you and your mother, or worse." The silence that followed was so heavy it seemed to have physical weight. "Your own father would do that?" "My father built his empire by crushing anyone who stood in his way. Do you think he'll hesitate to do it to a woman he considers a threat to the family interests?" Emily felt fear, but also a steely determination that surprised herself. "Then we'll have to be smarter than him." "What?" "Listen to me. Your father has power. Because he has money and connections. But we have something he doesn't." "What?" "True love, and people who truly love find a way to be together." Ethan looked at her as if she were a miracle that had just appeared in his office. "Emily, we could lose everything. You could die." "I've already lost everything once, Ethan. When I thought my mother was going to die, I survived, and I learned something important. A life without love isn't living. It's just existing." Emily stood up and walked toward him. "My mother raised me to be strong, to fight for what I believe in, and I believe in us." Ethan came to her, taking her face in his trembling hands. "Are you sure? Are you really willing to risk everything for this? For us? Are you?" Instead of answering with words, Ethan kissed her. It was a desperate kiss, full of weeks of pent-up longing, of fear, of hope, of a love he had been trying to suppress. When they parted, they were both breathing heavily. "I have an idea. It's risky, but it might work." "Tell me." "My grandfather, my mother's father, has an estate in the Hamptons. He's old, retired, but he still has influence. He never got along with my father. If we could go there, talk to him, do you think he would help us?" "I don't know. But he's the only person in my family who married for love and not for convenience. His wife, my grandmother, was a small-town teacher. When they got married, my grandfather's family almost disinherited him. But he fought for her, Emily. There felt a spark of hope. When could we go? My parents are going to be out of town next weekend. They're going to New York for a wedding. We could leave Friday night, talk to my grandfather on Saturday, and come back on Sunday. And if it doesn't work, Ethan took her hands, lacing his fingers with hers. Then at least we will have fought together. And if we have to run away from here, we'll do it together too. Run away? I have money saved in accounts my father doesn't know about. We could go to another country, start over, bring your mother with us. The idea was terrifying and exciting at the same time. You would leave everything, your family, your inheritance, your life here? Emily, my life began the day I met you. Everything before that was just survival. That night, for the first time in weeks, Emily slept peacefully. They had a plan. They had hope. They had love. But what they didn't know was that Victoria had been listening from the shadows of the garden, hidden behind the rose bushes. With a heart full of rage and jealousy, she was already dialing a number on her phone. "Michael," she said when the call was answered, "you need to come back immediately. Your son is about to do something very, very stupid." "What are you talking about, Victoria? I'm in an important meeting." "Ethan is planning to run away with the maid. I heard them talking about going to your father-in-law, about escaping the country. They're going to ruin everything we've planned." There was a silence on the other end of the line, and when Michael spoke again, his voice was pure ice. "I'll be back tomorrow, and this time that girl is going to learn the consequences of messing with my family. The secret will finally be revealed, and nothing will ever be the same." "Do you think Ethan's grandfather will help them? Or will Victoria ruin their plans before they can escape? Comment what you think will happen, and hit like if your heart is in your throat. The end is near, and it will be more shocking than you imagine. On Friday morning, the tension in the Williams mansion was palpable. Michael had returned from New York a day earlier than planned, and his presence filled the house with a dark, threatening energy. Emily noticed that Helen avoided her gaze, and when she tried to ask what was wrong, the older woman just shook her head and muttered something about a storm coming. Ethan, for his part, had been absent all morning. Emily knew he was in meetings with his father, but the fact that he hadn't appeared to confirm their plans made her nervous. At 3 in the afternoon, while cleaning the main living room, she heard agitated voices coming from Michael's study. She couldn't help but move closer to listen. "This is over, Ethan." Michael's voice boomed with a fury Emily had never heard. "I will not allow you to ruin this family's name over some nobody. Don't talk about her like that." Ethan's voice was tense but controlled. "You're going to defend her? A maid who only wants your money? Emily isn't like that, and you know it. Do I? Do you know how many women like her I've seen in my life, Ethan? Gold diggers who play sweet and innocent until they get what they want." There was a silence, and then Ethan spoke in a voice Emily had never heard from him, cold, calculating, dangerous. "Like Victoria, right, Dad? What are you implying?" "I'm implying that I know exactly why you're so desperate for me to marry her. I know about her father's shady business deals, about how their family can help you launder money through their banks in Switzerland." Michael was quiet for a moment so long that Emily thought the conversation had ended. "Be very careful, son. You're treading on dangerous ground." "Like Olivia was?" The question dropped like a bomb into the silence. Emily held her breath. "Don't you dare mention that name." "Why? Because it's a reminder of how far you're willing to go to protect your secrets?" "Olivia died in an accident. Olivia died because she knew too much, and because I was too much of a coward to protect her." There was a thud, as if Michael had slammed his fist on the desk. "That girl meddled in affairs that were none of her business, just like your little maid is meddling now." "Is that a threat?" "It's a reality, Ethan. That girl is leaving this house today, and you are going to marry Victoria in 2 months. End of discussion. And if I refuse, then you'll discover just how easy it is for a young woman and her sick mother to disappear." Emily felt the blood freeze in her veins. Without another thought, she ran to her room, her heart pounding so hard it hurt her chest. 20 minutes later, Helen appeared at her door, her eyes red. "Emily, you have to leave now." "What happened?" "Mr. Michael ordered you to leave immediately. He says they no longer require your services." Emily began to pack her few belongings into her suitcase with trembling hands. "Where's Ethan?" "Mr. Michael sent him to Chicago on the private jet, a business emergency that's going to last a week." It was obvious that Michael had intentionally separated them. "Helen, I need you to give this to Ethan when he gets back." Emily quickly wrote a note. "It's important." The note simply said, "I'll be waiting for you at St. John's Church where you went as a child, every day at 6 in the evening, no matter how long it takes. I love you." Helen took the note with tears in her eyes. "Be very careful, honey. Mr. Michael is not a forgiving man." When Emily arrived at her small apartment, she found her mother preparing dinner as if it were a normal day. "Honey, what are you doing here so early? And with a suitcase?" Emily collapsed into Sarah's arms, crying as she hadn't cried since she was a child. "They fired me, Mum, and I think we're in danger." She told her mother everything. Her love for Ethan, Michael's threats, Olivia's story. Sarah listened in silence, stroking her daughter's hair. "What are you going to do, sweetie?" "I'm going to wait for him, and we're going to fight for our love." Sarah took her daughter's face in her hands. "Then we'll do it together. But first, we need a plan to keep ourselves safe." The next few days were a torture of waiting. Emily went religiously to St. John's Church every day at 6, waiting for Ethan. Father Michael, an elderly priest who had known Emily since she was a child, allowed her to stay until the doors closed. "Waiting for someone special, my child?" he asked on the third day. "The love of my life, Father." "True love always finds a way," he replied with a wise smile. On Wednesday, while Emily was at the church, a man in a suit approached her. He was tall, intimidating, with a scar across his left cheek. "Emily Johnson." "Who's asking?" "I have a message from Mr. Michael Williams." Emily felt her skin crawl. "I have nothing to say to him. He thinks otherwise." The man sat on the pew next to her, and Emily could see the outline of a gun under his jacket. "He says you're waiting for someone who is never going to come." "He's wrong. Ethan Williams is marrying Victoria Vega in 6 weeks. The announcement is already in the papers." Emily felt as if she'd been punched in the stomach, but she maintained her composure. "I don't believe you." The man took out his phone and showed her a photo from the online edition of Miami's most important society paper. There it was, on the front page. The wedding of the year, Ethan Williams and Victoria Vega to unite two of Florida's most influential families. The photo showed Ethan and Victoria smiling at an elegant dinner, Victoria's engagement ring sparkling under the lights. "As you can see, he's already made his decision." Emily looked at the photo more closely. Something was wrong. Ethan was smiling, but his eyes were empty, like a man playing a role. "When was this picture taken?" "Last night, at the engagement dinner." But Emily knew Ethan had been in Chicago all week. The photo had to be fake, or at least edited. "Tell Mr. Williams his little show doesn't convince me." The man moved closer, his voice becoming threatening. "Tell him yourself. He's waiting for you in the car outside." Emily looked toward the church door and saw a black limousine parked there. Her first instinct was to run, but she knew she wouldn't get far. "And if I refuse? Then I'll have to pay your mother a visit, and it won't be a friendly one." With trembling legs, Emily followed the man to the limousine. Inside, Michael Williams was waiting, impeccably dressed but with an expression that froze the blood. "Sit down, Emily." She sat as far away from him as possible. "What do you want?" "I want you to understand the situation. My son is in Chicago, closing a deal worth hundreds of millions of dollars. When he returns, he will marry Victoria and forget you ever existed. You don't know your son." Michael smiled, but there was no warmth in it. "I know Ethan better than he knows himself. He's a romantic like his grandfather, but he's also smart, and when he sees what can happen to the people he loves if he continues with this foolishness, he will make the right decision." "What do you mean?" "I mean your mother received a very interesting call from the hospital this morning. It seems her health insurance has some problems." They might have to suspend her treatment at any time. Emily felt the world spin. You can't do that. I can. Do that and much more. But I don't want to be cruel to you, Emily. You're young, beautiful, intelligent. You can make something of your life. I'm going to make you an offer. He pulled an envelope from his inner pocket. Here is $50,000 in cash. There's also a plane ticket for you and your mother to Spain and the address of a private clinic in Madrid where your mother can receive the best treatment in the world. Emily looked at the envelope without touching it. In exchange for... What? In exchange for you disappearing from my son's life forever. You will not try to contact him. You will never return to Miami. And if I refuse, then your mother will die, slowly, painfully, without medicine to ease her suffering. And you will live the rest of your life knowing you could have saved her, but chose not to. Tears began to fall down Emily's cheeks. You're a monster. I'm a businessman protecting his investments. Ethan is my most valuable investment. Emily took the envelope with trembling hands. How do I know you'll keep your word? Because I am not some movie criminal. I am a respectable man who honors his agreements, but I am also a man who follows through on his threats. What are you going to tell Ethan? I'm going to tell him the truth, that I offered you money and you left, that you never really loved him. You just wanted his money. He won't believe me at first, but as the weeks pass and he hears nothing from you, he'll start to doubt. And by the time he marries Victoria, he'll have forgotten you completely. Emily got out of the limousine, feeling as if she had sold her soul to the devil. But every time she thought of her mother dying without treatment, she knew she had no other choice. That night, as she packed to leave the next day, Emily wrote a letter she knew would break Ethan's heart. My dearest Ethan, when you read this letter, I will be far away. Your father was right about me. All this time, all I wanted was your money. I'm sorry for making you believe I loved you. You're a good man, and you deserve someone of your own class. Be happy with Victoria. Emily. She asked Helen to give it to him when he returned. The next day, Emily and Sarah flew to Madrid with broken hearts, but hope for a new life. Meanwhile, Ethan was returning from Chicago a day earlier than planned, desperate to see Emily. When Helen handed him the letter, he read it once, twice, 3 times, unable to believe the words. Where is she? He asked. Helen. She's gone, son. She and her mother left yesterday. Ethan ran to St. John's Church, but Emily wasn't there. He ran to her apartment, but the neighbors told him they had moved. For days, Ethan searched for any trace of Emily, but it was as if she had vanished from the face of the earth. Finally, broken and confused, he agreed to marry Victoria. 2 years later, Emily stood in a primary school classroom on the outskirts of Madrid, teaching English to Latin American immigrant children. Her mother, fully recovered thanks to the treatment she had received at the private clinic, worked as a cook at the same school. They had built a new life, but Emily had never stopped loving Ethan. Every night before she slept, she wondered what he was doing, if he was happy with Victoria, if he ever thought of her. What she didn't know was that, at that very moment, Ethan was in Miami, sitting in a private investigator's office. Are you sure she's in Madrid? Ethan asked. Completely sure, Mr. Williams. She works at a school for immigrant children. Her mother is fully cured. Ethan had hired the investigator 6 months after his wedding to Victoria, when he finally realized that Emily's letter didn't sound like her. The words were there, but the feeling was completely absent. Is there anything else? Yes, sir. I discovered that your father offered her money to leave, $50,000 and medical treatment for her mother. Ethan felt as if his heart had been ripped from his chest. How do you know? I have contacts at the bank where your father withdrew the money, also at the clinic in Madrid where Mrs. Sarah was treated. Ethan stood up, a steely determination in his eyes. Prepare everything I need to travel to Madrid tomorrow. Sir, I'm going to get my wife back. But, sir, you're married to... My marriage to Victoria is a sham. I have never loved her and she knows it. It's time to rectify the biggest mistake of my life. The next day, Ethan was on a plane to Madrid, his heart full of hope for the first time in 2 years. Meanwhile, Emily was finishing her school day when one of her students, Maria, an 8-year-old girl from El Salvador, approached her. "Teacher Emily, do you believe in miracles?" "Why do you ask, Maria?" "Because my mom says finding a job here was a miracle, and I think you need a miracle too." "Why do you think that?" "Because you look sad when you think no one is looking, like you lost something very important." Emily knelt to be at the girl's level. "Sometimes, Maria, we lose things we love very much, but that doesn't mean we have to stop believing in miracles. Do you still believe in them?" Emily looked out the window at the Madrid sky, thinking of a pair of blue eyes that still lived in her dreams. "Yes, Maria, I still believe." What she didn't know was that at that very moment, Ethan was landing at the Madrid airport with a suitcase, a heart full of hope, and his grandmother's ring in his pocket. The next day was Saturday, and Emily had a habit of taking Maria and some other children to Retiro Park. It was her way of giving them a bit of the childhood they had lost by having to leave their countries. She was sitting on a bench, watching the children play, when she heard a voice she would recognize anywhere in the world. "Emily." She turned slowly, afraid it was just her imagination playing tricks on her. But there he was, Ethan Williams, more handsome than ever but with lines of exhaustion around his blue eyes, was looking at her as if she were a miracle. "Ethan." His name came out as a whisper from her lips. He approached slowly, as if afraid she might disappear. "I found you." "What? What are you doing here? How did you find me?" "I hired an investigator. I needed to know the truth about why you left." Emily felt the tears begin to fall. "Ethan, you're married. You shouldn't be here." "My marriage to Victoria is a mistake I'm going to fix. I never loved her. I could never love her because my heart has always belonged to you. But your family, my family can take my inheritance, my name, my past, but they can't take my future. And my future is you." Ethan knelt in front of the bench where Emily was sitting, pulling out a small blue velvet box. "Emily Johnson, 2 years ago I lost you because I was a coward. I'm not going to make the same mistake twice. Will you marry me? For real this time?" Emily looked at the ring that shone under the Madrid sun. The same ring that had belonged to Ethan's grandmother, the symbol of a love that had lasted a lifetime. "And your father?" "My father can go to hell." Emily laughed through her tears, and for the first time in 2 years, she felt whole. "Yes, Ethan. Yes, I will marry you." When Ethan put the ring on her finger, the children playing nearby began to applaud as if they knew they were witnessing something magical. Maria ran towards them. "Teacher Emily, I told you miracles exist." That night, in a small church in the center of Madrid, with Sarah as a witness and a group of immigrant children as guests, Emily and Ethan were married for the second time. But this time, no one could ever separate them. 1 year later, Emily stood in the garden of a beautiful house on the outskirts of Madrid with an 8-month pregnant belly, watching Ethan teach Maria how to plant flowers. Ethan had divorced Victoria and lost his inheritance, but he had built a new consulting firm that was more successful than anything he had ever done working for his father. Sarah lived with them, fully recovered and helping to care for the several immigrant children Ethan and Emily had decided to foster temporarily. "What are you thinking about?" Ethan asked, approaching her and placing his hands on her belly. "That sometimes you have to lose everything to realize what really matters." "And what is it that really matters?" "This." Emily placed her hands over his. "Us. Our family. Our love." Ethan kissed her gently. "You know what's the most ironic part of all this?" "What?" "My father thought he was pushing you away from me to protect the family fortune. But in the end he helped me find true wealth." "What is true wealth?" "A woman who loves me, not for what I have, but for who I am. A family built on love, not obligation. A life that has a purpose beyond money." That night, as they fell asleep in each other's arms, Emily thought about the long road they had traveled, the tears, the pain, the separation, the hopelessness. But she also thought about the most important lesson she had learned. True love always finds a way. Maybe not immediately, maybe not without pain, but it always finds a way. And when her daughter was born in a few weeks, she would teach her that it doesn't matter where you come from or how much money you have. What matters is the ability to love, to fight for what you love, and to never, ever give in to fear. 3 years later, the April sun streamed through the windows of the Madrid house, creating golden patterns on the wooden floor where 2-year-old Isabella, Emily, and Ethan's daughter was playing. Her brown curls shone like copper in the light, and her green eyes, identical to her mother's, followed with fascination the every move of the butterflies Sarah had painted on her bedroom walls. "Grandma Sarah, do the butterflies really fly?" Isabella asked with that infinite curiosity only children possess. Sarah, now 49, and in enviable health, knelt beside her granddaughter, her eyes shining with the same tenderness she had shown when Emily was little. "Yes, my love, they fly very, very high. And do you know what's the most beautiful thing about butterflies?" "What, Grandma?" "That before they are butterflies, they are caterpillars that can't fly. But when the right time comes, they transform into something beautiful that can touch the sky." Isabella clapped her chubby little hands, not fully understanding the metaphor, but feeling the magic in her grandmother's words. From the kitchen came the aroma of Colombian coffee and freshly baked bread. Ethan was making breakfast, a tradition he had adopted since they moved to Madrid. He cooked with the same precision he had once used to manage business empires, but now every gesture was filled with love instead of obligation. "Is my princess ready for the big day?" Ethan asked, appearing at the doorway wearing an apron that read "Dad Chef," a gift from Maria. For his last birthday, Isabella ran to him with open arms, and Ethan lifted her, spinning her around until her laughter filled the entire house. "Daddy, Mommy says special people are coming today." "That's right, little one. Today family is coming." Emily emerged from her study, where she had been finishing the plans for the new school they were building on the outskirts of Madrid. At 23, she had found her purpose, creating spaces where immigrant children not only learned English, but also kept alive the love for their home cultures. "Good morning, beautiful family," she said, kissing Isabella first and then Ethan, with the naturalness that only comes after years of true love. "Nervous?" Ethan asked, noticing the almost imperceptible tension in his wife's shoulders. "A little," Emily admitted. "It's been 3 years since I last saw your mother, and I've never met your brother Richard in person." Sarah approached and took her daughter's hand. "Sweetie, you're no longer the scared housekeeper who worked in their house. You are a successful woman, a wonderful mother, and the wife of her son. You have every right to be here." "Your mother's right," Ethan added. "Besides, Elizabeth has changed a lot since Isabella was born. Being a grandmother softened her." It was true. For the past 2 years, Elizabeth Williams had maintained regular correspondence with Emily, sending letters filled with sincere apologies and elaborate gifts for Isabella. It had taken time, almost 6 months after her granddaughter's birth, but she had finally accepted that Ethan's happiness was more important than social expectations. The doorbell rang at exactly 11 in the morning. Ethan opened the door to reveal Elizabeth Williams, who at 53 had changed noticeably. Her hair, once perfectly coiffed in a rigid bun, now fell in soft waves over her shoulders. She wore an elegant but comfortable navy blue dress, nothing like the power suits she used to wear for intimidation. Behind her came Richard Williams, 35, tall like Ethan, but with an easier smile. His wife, Patricia, a warm, smiling brunette, was carrying their 4-year-old son, James. "Ethan." Elizabeth approached her youngest son, and for the first time in years, the hug they shared had no social pretense. It was real, charged with mutual love and forgiveness. "Mum, you look well." "I feel well," Elizabeth replied, then turned to Emily. "Emily, my dear, The moment was crucial. 3 years ago, these two women had been on opposite sides of a family war. Now they looked at each other for what they truly were. Two women who loved the same man, each in her own way. "Mrs. Williams," Emily began, but Elizabeth interrupted her. "Please call me Elizabeth, or better yet, Mama Elizabeth. I think it's about time." The hug they shared was tentative at first, but when Isabella ran towards them shouting, "Grandma Elizabeth!" the tension broke completely. "My goodness, you're so big!" Elizabeth lifted her granddaughter, and the tears in her eyes were completely genuine. "You're even more beautiful than in the pictures." Richard approached Ethan with a mischievous grin. "Brother, you've got good taste. Dad was an idiot for not realizing it sooner." "How is he?" Ethan asked, though the tension in his voice showed it was a difficult question. "Old, stubborn, and lonely," Elizabeth answered sadly. "Victoria left him 6 months ago when she realized she was never going to be as rich as she hoped. His businesses, let's just say the authorities finally started asking the right questions. Is he in legal trouble? Big trouble. But he refuses to accept help, and he refuses to admit he was wrong about you." Ethan nodded. He had expected that answer. Michael Williams was too proud to admit his mistakes, even when those mistakes led to his ruin. Lunch was a revelation. Patricia turned out to be a literature professor, and she and Emily connected immediately, talking about education and the importance of preserving cultural traditions. Richard, who managed the legal side of the family business empire, was fascinated with the international consulting work Ethan had developed. "I've never seen you so relaxed," Richard commented to Ethan as the children played in the garden under the grandmother's supervision. "It's what happens when you can finally be yourself. Don't you miss the power, the respect that comes with the Williams name?" Ethan looked over to where Emily was, teaching Isabella and James how to plant sunflower seeds. "I have something better than power, Richard. I have peace. You talk like Grandpa Edward, maybe because I finally understand what he was trying to teach us." In the afternoon, after the children had fallen asleep for their nap, the adults sat on the terrace with coffee and pastries that Sarah had specially prepared. "Emily," Elizabeth said, "I want to apologize to you, not just for how I treated you 3 years ago, but for not seeing what my son saw in you." "Elizabeth, no, let me finish. I was raised to believe that money and social standing were the most important things, that a high-class woman could only be happy with a high-class man. I was wrong." Elizabeth took Emily's hands in hers. "I've seen the pictures of your school, of the children you help. I've read the articles about Ethan's work here in Madrid. You two are doing something that we, with all our money, never managed to do. You're changing lives. We all make mistakes," Emily replied generously. "The important thing is to learn from them. Can I ask you something personal?" "Of course. Do you ever hate Michael for what he put you through? For forcing you to leave Ethan?" Emily considered the question carefully. It was something she had asked herself many times during those 2 years of separation. "At first, yes. I hated him with all my heart. But then I realized something. His fear and his cruelty gave me something I would have never had otherwise." "What?" "They gave me the chance to prove that my love for Ethan was real. If we had been together all this time without obstacles, maybe we would have never fully appreciated what we have." Richard whistled in admiration. "You're wiser than many philosophers I know. It's easy to be wise when you've lost everything and gotten it back," Emily replied with a smile. That night, after the visitors had left, Ethan found Emily on their bedroom balcony, gazing at the stars over Madrid. "What are you thinking about?" "About how strange destiny is," she replied, leaning against his chest. 5 years ago, I was a scared girl cleaning houses to survive. Today, I'm the director of my own school, wife to the man I love, mother to the most beautiful girl in the world. Do you regret anything?" "Only one thing." "What's that?" "That I ever doubted, even for a moment, that our love could overcome any obstacle." Ethan kissed the top of her head. "Do you know what I love most about our story?" "What?" "That it didn't end like a fairy tale. It ended like real life, with work, commitment, forgiveness, and the daily decision to choose love over fear." The next day, as she was preparing her lesson for the school children, Emily received an unexpected call. "Mrs. Williams, this is Dr. Fernandez from St. Raphael's Hospital in Miami." Emily's heart raced. Had something happened with her old life in Florida? "Excuse me, doctor, but I think you have the wrong number." "Are you Emily Johnson Williams?" "Yes, ma'am. I'm calling because we have a patient who has been asking for you. He says he's your husband's father." Emily almost dropped the phone. "Michael Williams?" "Yes, ma'am. He suffered a heart attack 3 days ago. He's stable, but he specifically asked that we contact you. He says he needs to talk to you before it's too late." Emily closed her eyes, feeling the weight of the call. "Doctor, I'll have to speak with my family and see if we can travel." "Of course, ma'am, but if you are coming, I recommend you do so soon." That night, Emily told Ethan about the call. His reaction was exactly what she had expected, a mixture of pain, anger, and confusion. "I don't owe him anything," Ethan said, "after what he put us through." "This isn't about what we owe him," Emily replied softly. "It's about what we need to bring this full circle." "What do you mean?" "I mean, maybe it's time for us to be the ones who make the generous choice. The ones who decide to forgive, not because he deserves it, but because we deserve it." Ethan looked at her with a mix of admiration and love that made her feel like the most beautiful woman in the world. "How did you get to be so wise?" "I learned from the best teacher," she replied, taking his hand. "A man who taught me that true love isn't about finding the perfect person, but about choosing to perfectly love an imperfect person." 3 days later, Ethan, Emily, and Isabella were on a plane to Miami, carrying in their hearts not a thirst for revenge, but a chance for healing. Because some stories, the best stories, don't end with "and they lived happily ever after." They end with "and they chose love again and again, no matter how hard it was." And that, after all, is the only kind of ending worth having. Because in the end, as Emily had discovered, fear is just a shadow of love. And when love is strong enough, it can make even the darkest shadows disappear. This story isn't just about them. It could also be about you. Did you believe they could make it? True love always finds a way to triumph. Comment what city you're watching from, share this story if it touched your heart, and subscribe to the channel for more stories that will make you believe in love. Your ideas for new stories are also welcome. Hearts Reborn.